Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view The Long Kiss Goodnight. So, this, of course, is another Christmas film that is very, action-focused. Man, I was really happy when seeing this film, because I was like, you know what, I kind of watched this maybe once, but I kind of maybe got bits and pieces of it. And so when I was to watch this, now I was like, man, this movie's good. This movie was great. We have me go on and feel that it reminds me of course, the history of violence with Viggo Mortensen, the Liam Neeson movie Unknown, or also it reminds me of the Jennifer Garner movie Peppermint. That movie and this kind of feel very similar. But yeah, so we also have me kind of wanting to throw in the Bourne Identity also, but it's kind of it's not exactly the same. It's just saying well, just go in and just rattle off all the Amnesia movies. That's what kind of it gets to the point of, because of course we find Samantha Cain, who is dealing with a retrograde amnesia, and when she ends up going on to be a part of this public parade, it seems that that is a big mistake, because we go on and have Samantha kind of at home, kind of just cutting up carrots like she's never gone on to do before, and we all of a sudden have men coming to her house with guns firing away, and Samantha is very confused, because of course 8 years ago she had gone on to just show up somewhere, not knowing who she was, and so Samantha decided to live her life with Hal and her daughter, Caitlin, and just kind of think nothing of her past, and just oh well, I guess I'm just here now. So, we have Samantha that is to team up with Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mitch, and start to uncover her past, and realize that she, of course, is to be this assassin for the government, and then she starts to need to realize that she really needs to go on and remember everything, or otherwise she's going to die. So we finally have Samantha realizing that she is a girl named Charlie, and we have Rambo that really kicks in here with Gina Davis, and we have so many cool, fun one-liners, especially towards the end of this film, where we have Samantha who's fighting with Timothy by the later part of this film, and Samantha's like, oh, only 4 inches? And Timothy's like, well, you'll feel me. Because of course he's holding onto this knife. So this movie was great. I had a lot of fun watching it. And so with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into the double 5 time territory. And of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. I know that was a quick kind of way of showcasing and stating what happens in this film. Where can you go on and see this movie? Because it's available on available on Showtime or whatever goofy apps that a lot of people may not have. So I will go on and give you an app called Vidlesy, Vidlesy, Vidlesy. Check out this app to dare in fact watch a ton of stuff for free. And really, of course, I want to use this app also because I recently had to go on and find a bunch of apps, and so Vidlesy was still out there, was still up, and I was like, great, let's use this app. So hopefully you can dare in fact find this app, or go on to go into a number of different apps that I've used over time, like Yes Movies or any number of things, and hopefully be able to watch this movie bootleggish, but still for free. So with that said, let's go on into spoilers. So in the very beginning of this, we of course have the Honesdale Chamber of Commerce Season's Greetings Parade. And so we have Samantha kind of on this sleigh with Santa Claus, and we have one person shouting out, "It's like, man, Mrs. Claus is hot!" And so Samantha is just kind of chucking crap at him, like, "Shut up!" So we go on to, of course, have Samantha, who is telling us that she, of course, has uh, really been born 8 years ago, even though she's much older than that, because she doesn't know who she is past those 8 years. So we only have the only thing that was on Samantha was this kind of unusual blank key that she puts on this little bracelet, this little chain. So they had her condition called retrograde amnesia. They end up having another word that's kind of tossed in there. But so we have at points where Samantha is trying to figure out like how old she really is by looking into a mirror and seeing all the scars that she has all over her body. And so we had both Samantha and we had both Hal who are walking home, and we have Samantha and Hal talking about this nativity scene and how like Hal has like 3 women for 3 wise men, and Hal's just like, well, hey, like I'm sorry, like what do you want me to do? And so Samantha's like, well, like think about it this way, like they're just gonna have like certain guys just kind of stare at these women's chests all day long. And so Hal's like, well, yeah, I get that, but like there's nothing I can do. So we have Samantha who's calling out for Caitlin, who's in this treehouse with 2 girls. And Caitlin is to talk about her bear called Mr. Perkins that her mother had named for her. And so the 2 girls are talking about like, oh yeah, like her mother is weird or something like that. So we all of a sudden have Samantha getting up into the tree to then talk to Caitlin to say, it's like, well, hey, like, can you help me kind of get ready for this party? So the party goes off, and we all of a sudden have kind of Samantha kind of bringing hors d'oeuvres and stuff like that, kind of bringing around certain things, and it's to see a kid named Raymond smoking. So we have Samantha like talking about, well, look, well, hey, if I ever see you smoking again, like you're gonna be dead. So we have Hal who gets up and does this toast, and is to talk about how he doesn't drink, smoke, or swear. And then he's like, ah, crap. Like, well, I guess I actually do drink and I do smoke. So, kind of ruined the joke, but anyways. So, we have Hal who's to kind of mention how like grateful he is, and he's talking about how the past and the future, some kind of goofy quote there. So we all of a sudden have a guy named Earl who is kind of just drinking along, yeah, chugging along. So we next up go on to have Mitch, who comes into this hotel with 2 detectives, 2 officers. And this, of course, is Samuel Jackson. So Mitch is busting a girl named Trin with a man in the bed who is played by Rex Lynn. So we have Mitch going on and stating like, okay, Officer Dunleary, go on and read him his rights, or otherwise, like, we probably could like make this all go away if so the guy ends up paying out, and so we find that Officer Dunleary while he's trying to do the Miranda rights, is starting to barf. So, as we find out that afterwards this was all just some scam, this was all some trick, we find Trin counting the money, and Trin is now telling Mitch, it's like, well, hey, like, why do you always hire hobos to play your detectives? And Mitch is like, well, like, because they ask for very little. And so Trin is like, well, yeah, but they also like barf all over you. So like I guess you can just kind of take what you can get. So we have Trin with this new file, and so Mitch is asking Trin, it's like, well, hey, what is this file about? And Trin ends up saying, it's like, oh, like, it seems that someone was to go on and find a credit card of a woman named Samantha Keynes, and like they went on and used it, and so that's it seems like her trail had gotten cold a while ago, but now it's back on. So we then have Mitch who's telling Trin, it's like, okay, we'll kind of look into this case, and so that way we can get paid. So now we go back to the tail end of this party, where Earl, of course, is being driven by Samantha. And so we all of a sudden have Earl, who is to obviously be drunk, and so Samantha's like, well, hey, like, how about you go on and like you burp a couple times and you say hiccup, and so Earl's like, I'm not drunk. Like, I can go on and do the test. And so like Earl starts touching almost Samantha's like chest, and Samantha starts getting offended. It's like, hey, Earl, stop. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm drunk. So we all of a sudden have Samantha who's driving the car, and a deer just comes out of nowhere, it seems, and she runs it over and then crashes the car. And so we then had Samantha, who had been flown from out of the car, and is to go on and snap the neck of the deer, which is an awful sight, but like it was dying already, it was in agony. So we then go on to the Jersey Correctional Facility, and we have a guy named One-Eyed Jack. One-Eyed Jack is to be watching the news from his prison cell, or from his prison, and he all of a sudden is to notice that Samantha is alive, and so Jack is going wild. So they don't even rationally help us understand how Jack had gotten out of prison to go after Samantha, because that's what happens somewhere later in the film, but still, I'm like, how is it that Jack just easily got out of all this? But so, the next thing we see is Samantha in this hospital, seemingly getting watched over by Hal. And we have Samantha that is to have this weird and goofy dream, and she is to look into the mirror and see a woman named Samantha, or Samantha? Not so much. Samantha goes into looking into this mirror and is to look at her double with slicked back hair, and this of course is to be Charlie. Oddly enough, they couldn't have gone on and had this character having blonde hair, so like there's a whole goofy thing about this. So we have Charlie, who's in desperate need of a smoke, and Samantha's like, well, I don't smoke, and Charlie's like, oh, but you will. So because Charlie is stating that she is coming. It took this big, huge lob to the head to start to trigger some Charlie-like stuff. So we then transition to Mitch. Mitch, with the money that he had gotten from probably from his last scandalous caperish thing, we have Mitch who tries to go on and buy a toy for his son Todd, and he ends up kind of mentioning what the set is, and so we all of a sudden have Fran, who's to kind of interrupt the two of them talking and to say, like, okay, Todd, like, it's time for dinner, get in here. So Todd cannot accept Mitch's gift because he's always very worried that there's going to be some kind of crime attached to it. So he just could not accept this gift. So Mitch goes on and gets a call from Trin, and the call is from a person that was to have found out that Samantha was this kind of lost tenant, and they had kind of kept all of her stuff. So, come to find out, they seemingly have Mitch going on like, yeah, like, we have something on him, great. So, follow the trail of breadcrumbs. So, the next thing we see is that Samantha is back home, and she, of course, is trying to cut up this carrot, and Hal is going on and telling Samantha, it's like, well, hey, like, is there an ETA on that carrot? Like, are you gonna get it done sometime today? So, Samantha is just struggling with cutting this carrot, but then all of a sudden she starts cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. She's like, wait a minute, like, how is it that I'm just chopping this so well? And so she's like, rapid fire these carrot choppings. And so she's like, hey guys, like, give me any other kind of food so I can chop it. So she starts, like, chopping peppers, chopping tomatoes, and all of a sudden she takes one of these tomatoes, tosses it in the air, throws this knife, and the knife and the tomato make their way onto this wall, and Samantha's like, oh, I guess that's what chefs do. And they're like, yeah, what kind of weird chef is that? So, we have a guy named Timothy, who's played by Craig Bierko. Or Bierko? Not quite sure. I apologize if I butchered that name. It's Craig. So, we have a guy named Timothy who is in front of a begging man who's begging for his life, just kind of tied up. He's like, please, just kill me, just get it over with, please. Woe is me, just murder, you know what I'm saying? So, we have Timothy that is to get this call, and Jack is, of course, very upset, and rightfully so, because it's like, well, hey, like, this chick is still alive. How is it that this girl is still alive? And it's like, okay, all right, like, let's get to it. So, we have Samantha with Caitlin going ice skating, and we have Caitlin who's talking about her Perkins bear, and Samantha's like, don't worry about the bear, just worry about trying to ice skate. So, we have Caitlin who tries to ice skate, and we have Samantha that's like, okay, I'm just going to leave you to just kind of just skate on your own. And immediately when Caitlin gets, like, free of her mother, she falls and breaks her wrist. So, we have Samantha that's like, okay, we'll just get up and, like, and try this again. And Caitlin's like, no, like, my arm hurts and I don't want to skate anymore. And Samantha's like, well, like, you're gonna skate, you're gonna skate to here and back again, and this and that, and there is always going to be pain, and so we have Samantha who's just realizing that she might have said something very mean to her daughter, and so Caitlin ends up getting a cast at the hospital, and while Hal is kind of looking over his daughter and then goes to see that Samantha is in the treehouse, it's like, well, hey, like, you went into the treehouse, but you really should go into the doghouse for what you did to your daughter. What horrible things that you said and you did. How dare you? How could you? And so we have Hal that is trying to be comforting to Samantha, and Samantha's like, no, uh, it's not me that I don't trust, it's whoever's inside me, kind of thing. So next up, we all of a sudden have a bunch of choir singing people that are all outside, just kind of joy to the world, kind of singing away whatever Christmas song that they're peddling for their probably charitable donations, those Christmas mother truckers. So we have Samantha that's like, okay, like there's these people singing, maybe if I give them some money they'll go away. We all of a sudden see like a shotgun kind of in the background, and we're like, oh no, this is gonna come off badly. So come to find out, One-Eyed Jack is coming in, is like, ha, like I'm gonna get you. So we have Jack that kind of goes on to push Samantha, and then is kind of fighting with Hal with the shotgun. Is like, so we have at one point where there was a shotgun blast, and we just have Samantha that like tosses Caitlin like right out this house, and I think she like flies into like the tree house, and I'm like, wow, luckily this kid didn't get hurt. But I guess like her possibly getting hurt is much better off than her getting dead by a shotgun blast. So Samantha and Jack are fighting into the kitchen, and Jack states, I want my eye back, bitch. And so he's fighting with her, and so what happens is that Samantha is to take this pie and just plah Jack right in the face. He goes down, and so Samantha goes on and just kind of snaps his neck. And when Hal is to realize, like, wow, okay, Rambo, we have Samantha just like, well, that's what chefs do, as she's kind of like licking this last bit of like cake off of her fingers. I'm like, okay, nice. So we have Mitch that arrives at the door. Hey, I'm here. How's it going? You don't know me, but I know who you are. So we have all these cops that are swarming this house, and everybody's going on and saying like, hey, don't shoot this guy. This guy wasn't the guy. The guy is dead in there. So we have Mitch that is telling Samantha, it's like, well, hey, I know about your past, and I can go on and help you kind of discover these things, because it seems like there is a number of people that are wanting to come and get you, so you might as well kind of just separate from your family to keep them alive. So we have Samantha that goes on and gives Caitlin this candle and these matches, and it's to state like, well, yeah, like, light a visual for me every night, and hope I will come back to you. So we have Mitch and we have Samantha that are driving along on this road, and so we all of a sudden have Mitch who is gonna like swerve his car because he sees this really hot woman, and Samantha's like, really? Like, you had to go on and completely stop the car to do a whole woo-hoo? And we have Mitch who's like, well, I didn't go woo-woo-woo. No. Like, if anything, like, that girl's rack was amazing, and so, like, I just wanted to stop and appreciate. Kind of like the whole, like, smell the flowers thing. Like, Mitch is going on and doing that same thing. And so we have also Mitch that's saying to Samantha, it's like, well, hey, hey, you have, like, your good things, too, from the neck up. So we have Mitch and we have Samantha just kind of going into all of this, And so we start to have Samantha realize that she was to go on and get this book, and it was to be signed from a guy named Nathan, and this guy is a PhD. So they're like, okay, like we should kind of figure out the phone number for this and call this guy. So we have Nathan that is with a woman named Alice, and like he's trying to go on and be able to like eat or try to do something. And we finally have Nathan that is to look at Alice like, could you really just not have this dog by me? And Alice is like, well, why? And Nathan's just like, well, like, because obviously for the last 3 hours, this dog has been licking its rear end. And, like, this dog is kind of pointlessly doing this because if the dog hasn't gone on to clean what it's going to clean within, like, the first hour, then it's, like, there to stay, or, like, this dog is just weird. So the dog leaves, Alice leaves. So we next up have Mr. Perkins that is going on and talking to the president. So we of course have Perkins who's talking to the president, mentioning that and I'll get to the phone call with Nathan in a little bit here. I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of what's going on here. So Perkins is to mention about how Samantha was this assassin. And so the president's like, well, you know what? Like, when you guys go on and make mistakes like this, and you come to me for some kind of funding for something, I want to go on and just tell you, like, you know where your funding is? Healthcare. Because it's like, why should I bother? So Perkins is to make the president aware of this, but Perkins is going to go on and do his own thing. So we have Samantha that calls Nathan, and Nathan, of course, is know exactly who Samantha is, and tells her full name, who is Charlene Elizabeth Baltimore. And I'm like, Baltimore is really her last name? Wow, like, that's pretty cool to just have a last name that is also an actual place. So we have Nathan who's going on to tell, like, Charlie that that he knows who she is and wants them to meet together at this train station so that way he can tell her everything. So we go on to have them arrive at this train station. And so we have Mitch that is to realize that things might get bad in this train station, so he grabs for this gun that's in his trunk. And all of a sudden he starts to... No, this isn't the train station, this is the hotel. My bad. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, we have Mitch and we have Samantha at the Dutch Cabin Hotel. My bad. So, we have Mitch that all of a sudden is starting to sing about kind of turning off the lights or just kind of doing common everyday stuff. And so we have Mitch that is listening in on Samantha or just kind of talking to her. And Samantha is to go on and start cussing. And Mitch is like, well, hey, like, you're very weird because at one point, like, you weren't cussing. And then in other times, like, you cuss more than a sailor does. And so, like, what's up with that? And we, of course, have Samantha. It's like, well, mind your own business. Get out of here. So we all of a sudden have Samantha who starts putting together this sniper rifle fairly quickly, like she knows the ins and outs of it. And she then goes on to have this kind of blade in front of this mirror, and she sees that it's Charlie in the mirror, and so Samantha just freaks out to all of a sudden have this sniper rifle shoot off as Mitch is kind of going into the room, but like, what the heck happened? And so, because it seems that Samantha is kind of having these kind of these visions or this nightmare. So, they both leave the Dutch cabin, and so we have Samantha that is going on and talking about how, like, her not knowing who she is kind of like being imprisoned, and asks Mitch if he has ever gone on to feel that way, and Mitch is like, well, yeah, I was in prison for 4 years. So we come to find out that Mitch ends up telling this story about that he used to be this officer, and that what had happened is that he had a partner, and one day all of a sudden, like, these bonds had gone missing, and wouldn't you know it, like, those bonds would find their way into Mitch's place, and Mitch got arrested for it. And Samantha's like, well, oh, like, so did your partner plant those on you? And Mitch is like, oh no, I stole those, but from some anonymous tip, someone was to have found out about this, and so I got arrested for it. So we then go to the train station. So now we're here, and we have the guys not know what Nathan looks like. So they're going on to hope that they can find whoever this guy is. So we have Samantha who sits next to this kind of bar, and we have a guy who was to be Timothy meet up with Samantha, order her a drink, and then realizes, oh, you have a wedding ring. What a big mistake. So Timothy starts talking to Samantha and realizes that Samantha doesn't know who he is, and he's like, great. So Timothy sneaks away, and that, of course, is when Samantha and Mitch seem to meet up with this guy who they think is the guy they're looking for, but instead they are to have an all-out gunfight here. So we have Mitch and we have Samantha that are running out of this train station, guns in hand, even stealing some of the bad guys' guns, so that way they can have more armor. And everywhere that they try to exit, it feels that they, or what was I saying here? So, in the train station, we have the guys trying to, like, come in all exits to where there was no way out. So, they have to go on through this whole train station to figure out an exit. And what happens is they have to break their way through this window because there is a grenade being tossed. So, Samantha and both Mitch go flying, and they are to have a 3-story drop. Samantha goes on to fire her gun into this ice. They break through the ice, and we have them kind of survive this. So we have Nathan that is to tell both Mitch and both Samantha to get in his car. It's like, well, how do we know that we can trust you? It's like, well, hey, I'm the guy that you called. So we go on to have Nathan kind of fill in Samantha about a bunch of things, that she is to be this assassin and this and that. And so Mitch and both Samantha, it's like, this story seems too good to be true. I think that this guy may not also be trusted. So they go on and they start to attack him, but they don't kill him off. So both Mitch and Samantha decide to run, and so we have Samantha, who's kind of reading this postcard, and is to find her way to a guy named Luke. And so Samantha is to say to, well, hey, like, for some reason, I remember this Luke guy. Like, I remember how he smelled. Like, I remember that I was going to marry this guy. So we have this postcard, like, being dressed to this uncle guy. So, Uncle Max. So we have Samantha go to this location to meet up with Luke, and Luke ends up hugging on to Samantha as if they're lovers. Like, hey, like, yeah, like we were gonna get married. Like, where were you? So we again have Mitch that's like, I don't know if we could trust this guy either. And Samantha's like, no, like, I know everything about this guy. So we have Nathan that arrives to grab Mitch. He's like, what are you guys doing here? Like, I followed you guys here. And Mitch is like, well, like, it seems that Samantha knows this guy. And Nathan's like, no, like, that guy is Daedalus, or Daedalus, a goofy name. And so come to find out, this guy Luke is to not be the guy to be trusted here. So Nathan is trying to tell Samantha this, and we then go on to have Timothy arrive on this helicopter, and so, like, they realize that it's like, okay, like, the jig is up here. So Samantha is kind of on this, like, water wheel, and she's tied there, and so Mitch is going on to have been, like, tortured and tied up in some location somewhere. So we have Samantha wanting, we have Samantha who is going to be tortured by both Luke and Timothy to get information from her. And so we have Samantha who ends up getting dunked into this water, and it's kind of very slow, kind of wind up kind of thing. So when Samantha goes down under the water, she sees Nathan's body dead down there. And so Samantha, when going back up, it's like, okay, like, do you have information for me? And Samantha's like, so we have Timothy, we have Luke contemplating, like, how long really should they just kind of keep her underwater for? It's like, well, hey, like, do you think we should keep her down there for 10 minutes? And Luke is like, well, I think, like, 5, like, will be long enough. So Luke puts her down there for longer, and so that's, of course, when Samantha flips the switch and is to start to become Charlie. So when Luke kind of reels now Charlie back up again, we have Charlie that's to go on and state, it's like, well, hey, like, you touched me, and, like, I think now I need a bath. So Luke is like, oh, okay, all right, like, I'm just gonna put you in the water more. So Samantha goes down there to realize that Nathan has a gun, and so Charlie gets her hand free and then whips out Nathan's gun from out of his belt. And so when Luke reels her up, Charlie starts firing away at Luke, and Luke is to die. So we then go on to have Charlie go on and get to find where Mitch is, free them, get the heck out of there. So, as she used to go on and ask where Mitch is, we also had Timothy, who is to have these kind of Jack flashbacks when Jack had gone on to have Charlie in his trunk. Timothy is like, well, hey, like, I know it's really tempting, Jack, for you to go and get a little bit handsy on this girl, but, like, you might as well just try to kill her off fast. And so Jack goes on and makes the big mistake of starting to get handsy with this woman. Charlie wakes up and puts a thing through Jack's eye, and so, like, that's how he goes on to lose his eye. So, next thing we see is Charlie and Mitch are at this hotel randomly somewhere, and Charlie is getting a shower and cutting her hair and dyeing her hair to be blonde, like the picture that we see here. So, we have Charlie and Mitch talking, and so Charlie's like, well, hey, I'm just gonna go on and I'm gonna call Perkins, and I'm just gonna get my life back, and like Samantha was just some cover, and like Mitch is like, but you have a family, and Charlie is like, no, Samantha had a family, I'm Charlie. So Mitch is like, you know what, I used to like that, I really like that school teacher. If you can kind of just, if you can just kind of bring her up and have me meet her again, like, I'd really like to talk to her. So, because Charlie's master plan is she's going to go on to call Chapter, and so we have Perkins who's getting a call from Charlie, and so we of course have Charlie who is telling Perkins now that Daedalus is dead. So we have Perkins who kind of hangs up from Charlie, like, okay, like, let's figure out how we can kind of work things out. So Perkins is going on and talking to Timothy, and they're conspiring that maybe Charlie's going to know anything about Operation Honeymoon. So we have Trin call Mitch, and or no. We have Mitch who calls Trin to state that he is going to leave Charlie, and they're doing that all because to make it so that Charlie will be all alone, and also they probably realize that Mitch's phones is going to be tapped anyways. So we have Charlie and Mitch, and they're in this car together, and so Mitch is starting to realize that Charlie is kind of very, like, self-absorbed, and is going on and stating the words like I and instead of we, and so Charlie's like, oh yeah, that's right, I don't technically need you anymore. So she just boots him out of this car and starts driving, and so we then have Charlie that goes on to pick up Mitch, and so we had Charlie that also went out on her own to immediately find a guy who is going to whip out a gun on Charlie. And so they go down this alley, and we have Mitch who's to kind of whip out a gun on this headhunter, because Charlie used to state, like, yeah, this is a headhunter, and like Perkins is already calling people out to kill me off. So like, man, was that fast. So we have Charlie that easily takes this guy out herself and doesn't really need Mitch's help. But so we then turn to have Charlie, who's going back to Samantha's home. Because, of course, we have Charlie that realizes that she needs that key that she gave to Mr. Perkins, that bear, and because she needs it because there's a ton of money in some safe deposit place somewhere, and so she ends up telling Mitch, it's like, well, yeah, I got a big stack of money there. We can be rich. So when Charlie is to make her way back to Samantha's old home, we all of a sudden again have Charlie, who notices that Raymond's outside smoking away. And so now Charlie has this big gun, and Charlie ends up telling Raymond, it's like, what did I tell you about smoking? So she takes the smoke from a, yeah, and so she just kind of tosses it off. So we have Samantha that is trying to look for this key, and she then is to realize that both Hal and Caitlin are doing this whole nativity scene or something along those lines. They're kind of singing or doing something, and she's to use kind of this sniper scope to kind of see, like, oh yeah, like, I guess I do really like want them still in my life. Like, I really do want to protect them. So we go on to have, after this whole nativity scene is over, we have Timothy that goes on to find Caitlin and is to chloroform her and grab her. And so Timothy takes the kid and is to put her in a certain place, and Perkins is kind of like looking at what Timothy had done and like, man, we're monsters. And so Perkins ends up giving this kid a baby doll. It's like, well, hey, like, at least, like, we'll give her a doll so that way it doesn't seem too bad. So we have now both Charlie and Mitch that realize that this girl is to be taken and they have to do something about it. So they then realize that they need to go on and find where Caitlin is and to have this whole showdown. So we again finally have it where Samantha is to meet up with Timothy and Perkins, and she ends up getting captured, and she ends up getting tossed in this this fridge. And so we have Timothy that goes on to tell Charlie this whole plan. And we also had Perkins, who was to go on and explain Operation Honeymoon. So they go on and they mention that it was all budget cuts, and it's this like terrorist scheme that they're working on. And so we have Charlie that's like, well, hey, like, Timothy, like, how are you guys gonna go on and kill a bunch of people? And Timothy states that it's just some chemical bomb. And so Charlie's just like, okay, all right. So, like, supposedly they only have like a number of minutes to defuse this bomb and so on and so forth. And Caitlin will be in like this little cage part of this truck. So we no. Let me back up a little bit. So Kaylin and Samantha are going to be in the refrigerator, and So Samantha uses this baby doll and lets it kind of pee out, and we have Samantha who's like trying to have this spark with this crowbar, and Caitlin is to say, it's like, well, hey, like I still have the matches, and so Charlie lights this this kind of gasoline, and we all of a sudden see this massive explosion to where even Mitch, who's kind of getting like tortured and beaten up, he ends up going flying through this window, very safe and protected. So we go on to have Caitlin, who ends up getting taken and getting shoved into this truck, and both Mitch and both Charlie are just kind of fighting to get to Caitlin. And so Mitch is to go on and realizes that he's just going to run through all these guys, and we consistently have, through these kind of radio things, we have Charlie that's calling out to Mitch like, hey, like on your 3 o'clock, on your 12, on your this, on your that. So Mitch is trying to shoot some of these guys, but then he also gets pretty shot up himself. And so Charlie then goes on to run off to then get after Caitlin. And so we have Mitch, who is to go on and get to this car because he's still barely holding on. So Charlie gets to where Caitlin is, and we have Charlie getting onto this truck, and come to find out the truck doesn't have any brakes, and so Charlie's like, crap, like I'm gonna smash into this wall, this bomb is probably going to explode. And so what ends up happening is that the truck kind of flips over and continues to slide. So Charlie then goes on and grabs Caitlin, and so Charlie's telling Caitlin to just run as far as she can, and Charlie just kind of falls over because she had gone on to fight Timothy, and we end up having like the 4 inches, like the 4 inches joke where it's like, oh, only 4 inches, and it's like, well, you're gonna feel me. So they have them fighting with these knives, and so Caitlin gets stabbed in the chest. They end up going seemingly almost like it looked like this elevator shaft, and Timothy ends up falling, but he's still okay. So because both of them are kind of like holding onto this net, it's a very weird kind of fight between both Timothy and Charlie here. So, but we end up having Charlie that makes her way back to this truck, tries to stop the truck, and so what ends up happening is that now Timothy is to get into this helicopter, definitely wanting to make sure that Charlie is dead. So he wants to kill her himself. So we all of a sudden have Mitch come in with this car, so Charlie is to shove Caitlin in his car, and Charlie's telling like Caitlin and Mitch like, hey, get out of here, I'm gonna be the distraction. So we have Charlie that notices that there's this kind of tree light with this kind of person that's upside down kind of burning, but luckily he has this gun. So what Charlie does is she goes on to grab this light, is to kind of fire at it, and at this guy who's falling. And so Charlie is then going up and shooting at this helicopter fairly quickly, and Timothy ends up getting hit, and I think we end up going on to have this like helicopter just kind of land on this truck and explode that way. It blows the whole bridge. So But luckily, Charlie also gets out in time. So after it seems, we go on to have Charlie, who is kind of done away with everybody that she's going to need to do away with. I think Perkins ends up going on to be put on like trial or whichever. But anyways, we have the president that goes on to personally call Charlie in his estate. It's like, well, hey, like, I think you should go on and work with me, Charlie. Like, the pay is really good. And Charlie's like, no, I think I'm going to go on and become a teacher again. Because we, of course, had Charlie who was to find all of that money. And she's like, well, yeah, I'm pretty freaking rich, yeah, so I'm going to peace out. So the next thing that we see, though, because Charlie wants a favor from the president, so we all of a sudden have Larry King that is doing this whole special with kind of all these very important men, and then also we, of course, have Mitch, who is coming in to kind of tell his story, his tale about how he was so busy lately. And so we all of a sudden have both Todd and Fran, who were both watching on as Mitch was like, oh my god, he's on Larry King Live. This is crazy. So, really going on and having Mitch be redeemed. And also, like, Mitch almost had, like, died from all this. Like, we had, like, Mitch and Charlie and Caitlin that were just driving on for miles and miles and miles until Mitch couldn't drive anymore. And so we had Charlie that was telling Mitch, is like, well, hey, like, you better survive because we have all this money just hiding away. So the thing that we see at the very end of this is we go on to have both Hal and Charlie and Caitlin that are just at this kind of new house, just kind of away from everywhere, and they're just admiring these sights. And Hal's like, you know what, I could probably live here forever and just kind of just watch this view. Like, how about you? And Charlie's like, I can take it or leave it. So that's how the movie ends. We just roll credits with that. So with that said, I'm going to try to get out of here so I can hopefully put this out. So bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.